William Wordsworth said, "Poetry is the breath and finer spirit of all knowledge." But how do you get that message across to today's secondary pupils? Well, on Resource Review today, we're looking at 3 teaching resources that might just help. They are a website featuring an audio-visual presentation of poems, a web-based puzzle generation tool, and a poetry competition. Recommending today's resources is Jenny Wilson. Jenny is Head of Year 9 English and Media Teacher at Kingsmead School in the London Borough of Enfield. And on the panel today we have Meg Bauer, Head of English at Oakmead College of Technology in Bournemouth, and Judy Davies, Secondary English and Literacy Manager, Cambridge Education at Islington in North London. And our resource investigator, Matthew Tosh, is not quite wandering lonely as a cloud as he visits schools to see how the resources go down in the classroom. OK, Jenny, let's begin with discussing your first choice of resource for us today, and it's part of the BBC's website and it's their section Poetry Slideshows. Tell us about this resource and why you like it.
Well, I was doing some coursework about poetry across cultures, and I wanted to find a way of showing the students the poem being read by the poet, and I came across this website. Now, it's not always a poem that's read by the poet, but it's presented in a way which is closer to me reading it aloud in class. There's lots of different types of poems on here. You have Blake, Armitage, Duffy, Haney, and the ones that interested me was poems from different cultures. And I think it's important part of the poetry for the students to hear the accents and the dialect as much as to see the words.
The skin cracks like a pod. There never is enough water. Imagine the drip of it, the small splash, echo in a tin mug, the voice of a kindly God.
Well, now let's go over to Matthew. He's visiting Willowfield School in Walthamstow, North East London, to see how Poetry Slideshows is received in the classroom.
Well, I'm here at the school and we're going to see Lucy Evans with her Year 11 class looking at the BBC Poetry Slideshow. Let's see how they get on.
We're going to think about the images in the poem, okay? So have a reread of the poem. We're then going to have a look at this slideshow, okay?
So then, Lucy, tell me how you've been using the slideshow today.
Okay, so today we used it as a revision tool and we were focusing on images and imagery within the poem. Can you just start by writing this on a piece of paper and seeing how many things you can remember about the poem? So we got the students to do it first, coming up with their own ideas for what they would choose as images if they were looking at a slideshow or a photo album, and then watched and listened to the slideshow and compared and contrasted their own ideas with the images that had been used.
The 3 of you bend from the waist, holding each other on your knees, and shriek at the pavement. Your polka dot dress blows round your legs. Marilyn.
I think it does work well having that visual side so that you've got students who perhaps haven't understood the language so well, if they've got the visual tool as well, that can help them. And one of the limitations with it is that it won't expand to full screen, so it ends up being quite small.
And the choice of images for the slideshow, what do you think of those?
I think they're good in that they spark discussion, because some of them wouldn't be the images that I would have chosen, and the students also picked up on that. So they work well for that reason. On the most part, they kind of tell a story and tell the narrative of the poem, but some of them were unusual choices.
Thank you very much, Lucy, and we'll see what our panel thinks. It's back to the studio.
So Meg, what do you make of the BBC's Poetry Slideshows?
To be honest, I was a little bit sceptical at first because every time I've gone on the Bitesize, their focus is very much the AQAA syllabus and we do the AQAB. But the Poetry Slideshows have actually been really useful, not just necessarily to go alongside the poems, but as an introduction to the poems, just to show individual images and get students thinking about what the poem might be about or what sort of images might be used within the poem, and then showing the slideshow again with the subtitles on so they can kind of make the links between those. The other ones that I've looked at are the Wilfred Owen and William Blake ones, which I found very useful because they give some socio-historical background as well, so they really get it in context. So it's not just about the images in the poem, it's also the time that the poem was written.
Judy, what were your thoughts?
I agree that it's a lovely resource, and I think it's to be used in classrooms, but I still think it needs a good teacher behind it. My worry is that with some of the pictures that it takes away the wholeness of the poem. I would, for instance, advise teachers not to use the subtitle button, which is there, where you have one line of the poem at once. I think that's a shame, and I think it's nicer to see the whole. If they could somehow put the whole poem as well, that would be lovely. And the images are beautiful, though. I would say, for instance, the presents from my aunt, the sari as half an orange. Well, I don't think that's quite what the poet was wanting.
So it's a too literal interpretation of the imagery.
That you can end up with rather a too literal picture. However, it's lovely, and it's so much more than the teacher in the classroom can give.
Thank you all very much. Well, now let's move on to Jenny's second choice of resource for us today, which is an online puzzle generator. So explain this resource to us, Jenny.
When I came to London to teach, I kind of thought I wanted to put some games and starters into the lesson. And for poetry, it's really good because you can pick out keywords from the poem, or if they're comparing two poems, you can take the themes and put those words in it. Or just as a starter, you know, just to remind the students of alliteration, rhyme, rhythm. There are lots of different types of puzzles that you can have for free.
Okay.
I most often use word search. It takes a matter of a minute to do. You can copy and paste it into a Word document.
Right.
You can either print it off and give it to individual students, or what I like to do is have it on the interactive whiteboard.
And this is really just facilitates that introduction to the class and to get them thinking about the right words. And this is a free version of the resource online. There is actually a version that you can buy, isn't there? A slightly enhanced version.
Yeah, anyone can use this one.
Okay.
It's free and it's easy to use.
Thank you. Well, let's return to Matthew at Willowfield School to see what they make of the puzzle generating website.
Well, you join me back at the school. We're off to see Lucy Evans with her Year 11 class again. This time they're using Puzzlemaker online.
It's a word search, but we're going to be looking for keywords and/or images within the poem. But it's not going to be as simple as that, okay? Once you find them, you need to put your hand up and you need to explain to me why that word is relevant to the poem.
Lucy, how have you been using Puzzlemaker online in today's lesson?
For today's lesson, we used a word search, and I put the keywords and ideas from the poem that we've been studying in, and as a sort of quick revision tool, they had to find the keywords and then explain how and why they thought those words had been chosen and put into the word search.
So, how easy is it to create a word search using the programme?
It was very easy. I just entered the keywords that I'd selected, put it into the online tool, and it made the word search for me. I have looked at some of the other puzzles. The crisscross tool works quite well in English, and I think the word search and crisscross are most applicable to English. I think they could all work well in terms of getting the students to create their own puzzles to show their understanding. So can we just have a very general bit of feedback from the group?
They put emphasis on the words like mine, because they're saying that's just really strong, saying it's just mine, no one else's.
Yeah, you belong to me.
And also you, so it's like she's talking to her, and the poem's kind of talking to someone as well.
I think one of the limitations seems to be that there doesn't seem to be a solutions page, so you have to work out the solutions in order not to kind of have that slow process of finding them on the board or in class. And as I've seen it, it does seem to be very focused on just keywords or ideas within a poem.
So, your overall impressions of this?
Overall, I think it works well as a quick task, perhaps as a revision task in order to recap key themes and ideas within a poem.
Thank you very much, Lucy. And on that note, I'll hand you back to Hermione.
Well, Judy, do you think these online generated puzzles can be useful for teaching poetry?
I do. I also feel that some of them are a little bit trite. I would suggest too that the children, the pupils, are put in charge of generating some of them, which encourages them to look for keywords in the poems. The one I like particularly is tiles. And the reason for that is that it is using bits of words that stay in the same order.
Meg.
At our school, we've got a link to them for all teachers to access, and I know that they're used quite a lot for literacy across the curriculum within other subjects.
And have you used them for poetry?
We have used the word search quite a lot for poetry as a reminder of poetical terms, and also the crisscross. It's very good in terms of focusing on the understanding of the words within the poem and also kind of what the poem's actually about, so using that as a plenary after actually studying a poem.
What do you think about the presentation? Because it's not a great font. I don't know if you can muck about with
if
the
you
font,
transfer it over into Word, you can change.
I do tend to copy paste it into Word.
Yeah.
I prefer to use this over something else. It's just how quick it is.
OK, thank you. Well, now let's move on to Jenny's third choice of resource, something a little bit different, Jenny, a poetry competition.
OK, well, this is something from the Young Writers. They do annual poetry competitions, and I think they're about the 17th one. And they were writing to my school about 3 years ago, and I just saw it on a table. I thought, oh, I'll do that, I'll have a go. Students had written some poems, and I kind of sent them off, the ones that I thought were really good. And several of the students had theirs published. And what I really like about it is it's a nice book. It's got a nice cover, it's got nice pages, and the students absolutely loved it. They were stopping me in the corridor. I got this letter from Young Writers and they're going to publish my poem. Right. And what was excellent for them is I tell them their poetry's good, their friends do, even their parents might. But to get someone who doesn't know who they are to kind of qualify the poetry that they've written, it means a lot to them.
So the competition's run regionally, isn't it? So within each region, a certain number are then selected to go in the regional collection.
The students can purchase a copy if they wish, but a free copy of the book always goes to the libraries.
Meg, what do you make of incorporating a competition into your poetry classes?
Incorporating competition is actually quite good because the students feel like they have to do something good because they're competing against other people in the class. The other thing I do like about it is themed, so talking about my generation, it does actually make them consider and kind of look at different issues and ideas. So it's not just go away, write a poem, they've actually got to think about what they're writing about and how it links to the topic. The other thing I noticed in the ones that they've got this year, there's obviously been some really good teaching behind it, and there's been some Dulce Decorum S and some Shakespeare, and the students are writing in response to that.
Judy, what do you make of it?
There's a very good Ofsted report on the use of poetry in schools, and it comes out as very important that teachers engendering enthusiasm for competitions for poetry is key in there. So it fits very well in that, and I think that this is a particularly good example. I do worry a little looking at the contributors that there are few schools with many poems, but I think it's a lovely anthology.
So presumably the more schools that enter, the better. It's free to enter. So
I shall be encouraging schools to do so.
OK, thanks. Really good recommendations. Just to recap, the three resources that we've looked at are Poetry Slideshow's website from the BBC, Puzzlemaker Online from Discovery Education, and the Young Writers Competitions for Schools, run by Forward Press Limited. For more information about the resources featured today, go to our website. It's teachers.tv/resource review, or if you want to, email us, resourcereview@teachers.tv. A very big thank you to our panel, to Jenny, to Meg and to Judy. And thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time on Resource Review. Bye-bye.